The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
And greetings. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me well. Welcome yet again to another live broadcast here on the Crew podcast. This is our closing month and season time of December 2024. We're on the eve of January 2025. And I first and foremost would just like to send a moment of thoughtfulness and resilient energies to our sisters and brothers around the globe who are enduring spaces and places that are not in the restorative realm of peace. It's really powerful, some of the things that we are able to endure, some of the things that we are experiencing as part of the human family, and also some of the vibrations that have shifted what is truth to power, what is grounded in truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony. And I say those things with the following thought process involved as well, because here on this particular broadcast with the Crew podcast, and during this closing month of the season of 2024, we're taking some time to really reflect on what does it mean when we say that you're building a legacy. What does it really mean to build legacy? And how does that bring us together? How do we offer different formulations of engagement and structure? Okay, I'm being told that I am not audible. Give us a moment. Oh, I am. Give thanks. Thank you, Sister Queen Angela, our visionary, our blessed sister, who is bringing all the different elements and dynamics together. Thank you for that confirmation. I wasn't sure because I was looking in the chat, perhaps in the beginning. So let me go back to what I was sharing. When we speak of building a new legacy, we're speaking of a variety of things, and I would like to highlight what is usually shared inside of our broadcast. What is building legacy? It's an interdisciplinary and a transcultural media broadcast in the context of what we do here to share words, conversations, action, noble deliverables, perspectives, and just resolutions that are grounded on what we can do. Not so much what we can talk about, not so much what we can just reason or what we just do this portion with, but how are we able to bring together actionable deliverables? Remember that hashtag, actionable deliverables, so that we can address affairs within ourselves, our families, our communities, our respective nations, and bringing it wider and wider and wider so that it benefits humanity when possible. because some persons are not comfortable in their human frame. Hence, no matter what we do, no matter what things are shared, it just will not be pleasing and not be acceptable to many of them. We also talk about the way in which we can explore actions that are happening. I'm currently in the Virgin Islands, in the sense within the center of the Caribbean. We're also with connections, of course, because we're in the Virgin Islands of the United States, and of course we have the British Virgin Islands. But we see ourselves as one Virgin Islands, and we are persons that are geographically within the Caribbean Sea as well as the Atlantic Ocean. Hence, we value our connectivities to the Caribbean and the Americas. And when we speak of the Americas, we're speaking of the Americas from the North Pole to the South Pole. Not only the 48 contiguous United States, but all of the Americas. That's why they speak of North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean Isles, doting right in the middle of all of that area. We always talk about things that are happening in Africa to give context to things that affect persons of African ancestry, African ascent, especially now that there has been a renewal in the United Nations from the first international decade for people of African descent, which was January 1st, 2015, and it will close out December 31st, 2024. And very recently, just these last few days, the United Nations General Assembly, with efforts coming through from the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent, the Working Group of Experts for People of African Descent, amongst other non governmental organizations and civil society organizations. January 1st, 2025, let's get all these years straight, to December 31st, 2034, will be the decade, the second international decade for people of African descent. And this time, it's definitely going to have more actionable deliverables because persons are actually aware. There are persons that we can speak to, and I'm sure you can ask in your own communities how many people knew that there was an international decade for people of African descent declared through a resolution by the United Nations General Assembly. That one. And this also, when we're speaking of building legacy, allows for us to talk about things that are happening in Eurasia, things that are happening throughout the Pacific Isles, Oceania, as well as things that are happening in other parts of the globe that many times we overlook and do not have the joy, privilege, and opportunity to learn more detailed information about. And therefore, when we speak of authentic revolutionaries, we'll speak of authentic spirituality. And I use the term authentic because we're not just kind of throwing darts and throwing things in the air. And we definitely do not just cast ideas without having some type of a deliverable, some type of actionable engagement that we can utilize. But we also speak of culture, how we look at harmony in our voices, how we actually develop ourselves to be productive. And sometimes it may come across, I'll use what my son in love likes to say. Sometimes there has to be it may appear to be a dictatorship, but what it is it's direction, and it's disciplined direction and guidance. Not everyone knows what is best for everyone. And what is important is that when we speak of leadership in the 21st century, it's going to look a little different than how leadership has been customarily presented in previous centuries. It will come without there being a level of antagonism and hostility that's tranquil, because it will be for the greatest and highest good. In the meta nature, in the language of the divine, coming out of Hapi, what persons miscall Nile Valley civilization, miscall Egypt, and we're speaking of the ancient, ancestral, African, Nubian, Cushianu, Kemetu heritage legacy. Just want like people to make sure that they're on the same plane because we're coming to the opening days of a winter solstice to shift from the autumn season going into the winter season. And there's so many elements that we are able to speak to, and there are so many vibrations that affect persons. People tend to overlook things like solar flares, not my doing, but astronomical realities that happen around this time of the year, specifically on or before December 21st, right? Coming into that time where we will see illuminations and light in the skies and the heavens that give markers to that which brings forth the sun of light. I can leave it there because I'll let my other hosts in the platform really get an opportunity to do some things. But infomercial, something in the chat. Hey, hey, get signed up to be one of 122 authors from around the world showcasing and highlighting their brand. Don't allow opportunities to pass you by. Connect with Queen, and you can go to Linktree, Queen of Collaborations. I desire to send a special boop, 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 boop shout out to Sister Queen, our visionary, Angela, who was kind enough to share that particular piece. It's important that we keep these things open for persons that are listening, viewing. If you are interested in sharing your voice, sharing your brand, what type of business are you bringing into 2025? And with longevity as the goal, and prosperity in alignment, and wealth building. When we speak of building legacy, we're also speaking of wealth building that is intergenerational for our children, 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 children. You can tell where I live. I also wish to extend thanks to my fellow hosts in this platform, Sister Queen Jeanette Johnson, for just always vibing, tuning in, listening in, providing support, and then always identifying some different ways in which we can speak of how we handle preparing for this next year in the Gregorian calendar. Because we go around the world, we have different, you got a Mayan calendar, you've got Ethiopian calendar, you've got a variety. Every culture has its way of looking at time and establishing their calendars. And I feel it's very important to note that this will give us an opportunity to look into a variety of different perspectives of how our sisters and brothers around the globe are looking at our vibrations. I'd like to start also with sharing a couple of perspectives. I'm not sure how many people have ever heard of the publication Hell Under God's Orders. I'm going to say it again. We say Hugo, which is based on the 1989 hurricane that tore through, Category 5, tore through the Caribbean and certain parts of the South in the 48 contiguous U.S., caused a significant amount of, you know, billions of dollars of damage here on the Virgin Islands, particularly on St. Croix, as well as St. Thomas and St. John and Water Island. We were, without power for several months, without access to the basic necessities for months. And it taught our community not only about resilience, but about the type of unity and harmony that comes with our humanness. Everybody could see everyone's yard. Everyone could see who had, who didn't have, and there was a coming together at a time of a so-called natural disaster that remains unparalleled. Why am I speaking of it in this form? And I will share why. Hell Under God's Orders is a publication that was brought forth through the vision. Persons have a lot to say already. It was a publication that was done, it was led through the vision of Dr. Gloria I. Joseph. May she continue to ascend and rest in power. And what was interesting about this publication, alongside her co authors and contributors, Hortense Milligan Rowe, here from the Virgin Islands as well, and with commentary and editing oversight from Audre Lorde, the international poetess, activist. Again, may she rest in power and her name continue to be respected for her work. I highlight this particular publication because it was a combination of testimonies from persons that survived after the devastation that Hurricane Hugo shared during its visit in the Virgin Islands and the impact it had on the entire Caribbean, Americas, and even the world. Some persons fled from here after the hurricane, going north into the 48 contiguous US, and were hit by the backlash of that hurricane. So it was a double, for some triple whammy. Endless devastation. Some persons went to the West Coast, in the north, in California, and within less than a couple of weeks after the hurricanes were devastating the Caribbean, Americas here, there were earthquakes that caused significant loss of life and loss of property. Same year. And I take a moment to just share some of this because it's not so much to uncover the the pain, the suffering, the trauma that was experienced that most of us that survived that are still enduring or have learned to work through and live through so that we thrive instead of just survive for the like struggle, more struggle, and stay in the heights. But based on conversations that have been had over these last 24 to 48 hours, we need to breathe and we need to breathe together. We need to show loving kindness, not just because of the quote unquote holidays, but because this is an opportunity for us to show love and and to do so unconditionally and to do that with strength at the forefront of our efforts and to highlight ways in which we can begin to undo the chaos, the challenges, the hostilities, the vibrations that persons tend to overlook. You know, some persons are every time September 17th comes around in St. Croix, people kind of get a little nervous, not a little, very, because that's our, our hurricane season is from June, right around the summer solstice, until November 25th. They actually have hurricane supplication days where persons gather and they pray and they reflect and they meditate, they sing, they chant, they give thanks, they ask to be spared. And this is annually, like I said, in June, and it happens again when the season has passed over us, so called. Even though some of the weather, climate change, has made the season start more aggressively a little later, and sometimes it lasts beyond November 25th. And I share these things because sometimes when we're speaking about natural disasters, we also tend to overlook some of the conversations around if adults are going through this type of trauma. Imagine what's happening to our children. Imagine what's happening to those elders that are in spaces and places where they are in solitude or alone or feel alone, even if they are in a home for seniors or an elderly community, and what goes through their mind during these times of crisis. And the reason I also mentioning the Hugo publication is because while it was completed and published in early 1990s, and the two of the three primary authors and editors are ancestresses now. The estate and trust of Dr. Gloria I. Joseph has a limited amount of the publication available. And I've been honorably asked to make them available to our wider community. So for persons that would like to learn more about St. Croix in particular, the Virgin Islands, the energetics of thriving, even through Cat 5 hurricanes, the type of humanity that was exhibited or not, and the type of harmony that manifested during that time or not. It's great to hear from some of the persons that actually survived and learn how to take that survival vibration to really thrive beyond losing all personal possessions, or at least a significant number of them, experiencing damages to their body frame or those of their loved ones, as well as being able to engage and humble when bodies were found, whether they were in cisterns, where persons may have thought that they would have survived as like a bunker inside of a underground water containment system, or in some of our tributaries and waterways, or persons whose roofs collapsed on them. And it's always interesting when the emergency management professionals document there's been 10 persons whose lives were lost. However, those of us on the ground will know it's usually double, because some persons may have had documents to be present and some may not. And some persons were not of the, their deaths were not attached to a particular hurricane or natural disaster. It may have been that they had a heart attack afterwards. They may have bled out from an infection caused from being slashed by galvanized roof tin afterwards. They may have taken their life because they've lost all of their earthly possessions afterwards. And many times that loss of life, which is connected to the hurricane and the devastation caused, is not properly documented. Again, for persons that would just like to see and hear the power of the the conversations that persons were having, I'll use an example, and I probably should read an excerpt, but I'm going to only do that if asked. We're going to have a special broadcast where we're going to have some of our younger generations, those that weren't born in 1989, to read some of the excerpts from that work. But I do wish to let persons know they can email me at astspeaks, that's astspeaks with an S, at gmail.com. If you're interested in getting a copy, they're going for $25 locally, with proceeds always being provided through the estate as well as for educational activities that are happening here to support literature, culture, heritage, technology, and more. We would, and again, I will repeat that a little later in our broadcast. However, I just desire to just remind people that this is a time of remembrance and light. Many persons also, it was really wonderful here in the Virgin Islands, and I can't speak for what happens in the 48 contiguous when it comes to this season. But in St. Croix, this is the time of St. Croix Christmas Festival. Whew! Every type of pageantry you could think of, whether it's for the Duchess, the Duke, the Prince, the Princess, the Little Princess, the Queens, Miss St. Croix. There's every high school, all the elementary schools, all the junior high schools, and all of these extended schools have Miss Pearl B. Larson, whether it's Miss St. Croix Central High School, Miss St. Croix Educational Complex. I'm just saying there's so many different pieces of pageantry. And what is enjoyable is to see intellect, arts, and cultural qualities that really bring up the importance of having culture and heritage and traditions respected at the same time that we're looking at science, technology, education, engineering. I know you thought I was going to only say STEM, mathematics, the arts, and literacy for some reading. So we've got STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but you also have STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. And then you have persons that have even pushed the envelope forward to stream, science, technology, reading, engineering. I keep saying education, but I meant engineering, the arts, and mathematics. So whether you're dealing with STEM, STEAM, or STREAM, and I'm sure there'll be another acronym in 2025 to expand it even wider. The whole idea is to have a holistic approach to how we deal with education and edification. And I take a moment to share a couple of things with our viewers and our listeners that have joined me here. And I encourage persons, if you have questions, comments, reflections, and you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, please share them, and then they will populate inside of the studio. And if there's questions or comments, and again, our focus is to critique and share in the most positive way possible. This is a platform that highlights exchanges that elevate and support actionable deliverables. And when we talk about education, you will also hear me speak of the term edification. And when I'm speaking of edification, I'm speaking of let's use a definition term, the instruction or improvement of a person morally and or intellectually. So we're speaking of that there's a moral ethic, a scientific ethic, a academic to some, but academics can only tends to put people only on book knowledge. When you're moving into things with intelligence, intelligence has, as we know, we've got artificial intelligence, which is very popular to some. We have ancestral intelligence, which is predating all of these different intelligences. We have emotional intelligence. We have so many different types of intelligence. And it's important to know that it's how we apply and acquire and implement and utilize knowledge and skills. One more time. A person's or persons plural ability to acquire, get, and not or, and apply, implement knowledge and skills. What we've been covering, and the reason I'm doing this in the manner that is being shared, my guest is on a flight unexpectedly. We're hoping to have some of our former guests return to us with some degree of frequency. That way, persons can know that they'll be able to hear from persons in specific organizations that are doing things to help our youth, help our elders, help our families, help our wider communities, help our brothers, our men, help our sisters, our women, and everyone that is willing to elevate and to move beyond the limitations that many of us tend to experience when we're speaking of bringing truth to power and highlighting different conversations in the wider sense, in the wider scheme of things, I should say. So, since it is the holidays, and I made sure I did ask some people to be an integral part of our conversation, I've asked some folks to tune in and share their commentary on the network. And I'm noticing that some people are actually just sharing some different commentary, which I'm grateful. And I'm going to offer some of those when we talk about some of the things that were shared. We are alive and we give thanks for life. We may pray for the winds to go away, pray for things to be able to stay in the dawn, and we will rise with power and strength and engagement. Keep us in prayer. And those are the types of things that people write after they go through challenges. People might actually turn about and say that, when you get upset, some people actually use the term Jesus not only as a noun, but as a verb. And other terms, oh Lord God Jesus, we're very quick to say that as a phrase sometimes. And we need to make sure that we look very deeply, very intentionally with how we bring things together. All right, we've covered a few things. I'm sure she went all over the place. So we're going to go to even another place in a moment, because sometimes when we are having these conversations, especially around this season at the end of the Gregorian calendar year, in this case coming out of 2024, going into 2025. And I think it is really appropriate and pleasing for us to share and know that, yes, persons are highlighting the season of Christmas. There are also persons highlighting the seasons of Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and a host of other holidays that are blended during this time of year. Many persons are celebrating or celebrating the festival of Canoon being connected and linked to this winter solstice vibration, and acknowledging that while we have had the shift in seasons, this is also a time where many astronomical, scientifically grounded, not woozy woozy things, not scary things, or not from a realm that is not our own, are able to bring things into fruition. And it's really important that we take some time to un- uncover, unpack some of those things. I remember a time when persons were talking about the Nguzo Saba of, of Kwanzaa. And I always encourage our listeners, our friends and family more correct, to look at a particular publication called The Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. I'll say the title again. The Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. And this is by Dr. Mfundishi, Mfundishi, Chihutimes. We'll work on that. If you just find Dr. Mfundishi, you'll be fine. But the title of the book is The Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. And I'd like to just highlight this particular portion, and it's a quotation from a lecture by Dr. Mpundishi. This book, Spiritual Warriors Are Healers, is dedicated to the memory of all those giant spiritual warriors who are now ancestors, but who allowed me to stand on their shoulders while they were alive in their physical body temples, like Dr. John Henry Clark, Ashe, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X, Ashe, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, Ashe, and Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Ashe. May all their souls rest in peace, because their spirits are alive and well within me. I have been transformed and reborn because of their mighty spirits. Unquote. And that's from Dr. Mfundishi Chihutimes, the author of The Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. And why would I bring that up? Because inside of this book, this is one of the most comprehensive outlays of what is Kwanzaa, what are the roots of Kwanzaa, how does it relate to the seasonal holidays that Africans acknowledge, respect around this time of the year. And I just would like to share some of the pieces that are here and then also give a recommendation for a film that was done by M.K. Asante II called The Black Candle, which would really help persons to understand 21st century applications of Kwanzaa celebrations that are done not only in the 48 contiguous US, make sure that we got that, but around the world. Listen to the principles. Kwanzaa, as a celebration of first fruits, has ancestral roots throughout the African world, especially in spaces like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and others, grounding in Pan Africanism and principles of blackness. Unquote. That's coming from The Spiritual Warriors or Healers by Dr. Ependician. And for persons that, like, what is Kwanzaa? What is that? And again, it's not a Black Christmas. It's an actual observance that has ties to the first fruits and from the harvest and the way that families, communities, villages, ethnic groups, societies, nations work together and actually bring things into deep fruition. The principles of Kwanzaa, and they refer to them as the Nguzo Saba, the seven principles of Kwanzaa, Nguzo Saba, are for the first day, so I'll just say day one, is Umoja, which is unity. That's the 26th of December. Whether it's a Monday, a Friday, a Tuesday, Thursday, December 26th is the first day of Kwanzaa. And there is an acknowledgement, a recognition, a celebration around that principle of umoja, which is a Swahili term meaning unity. Day two, December 27th, the principle is Kujijagulia. Kujijagulia. I know it took a minute, but after a while you'd be like, Kujijagulia, Kujijagulia, Kujijagulia. It rolls off your tongue with practice, yes? In English, the principle is self-determination. Reflect on that, especially with what's happening on this side of the Atlantic pond in 2025. Day three, December 28th. The principle is Ujima. Ujima. And in English, that is collective work and responsibility. Day four, December 29th. The principle is Ujama. Ujama. In English, cooperative economics. So all those conversations on wealth building, intergenerational wealth, prosperity, fund development, fundraising, philanthropy. Day four is your day to really highlight that on Ujama, cooperative economics. Day five, December 30th, the eve of the eve of the new year in the Gregorian calendar. The principle is Nia, and most persons are pretty familiar with Nia. In English means purpose. The sixth day of Kwanzaa, December 31st, what persons refer to as the eve of the new year or New Year's Eve. The principle is kuumba, kuumba, and in English, that is creativity. You see where that can go. Let us be creative and safe and prosperous and blessed at the same time. It's wonderful. And the seventh day of Kwanzaa, January 1st, the principle is Imani, Imani. And in English, that is faith. And there are different activities, and that's why I encourage persons to look for or just do some research on the spiritual warriors or healers by Dr. Mpundisi Jehutimes, because there's an actual, I wouldn't call it a script, but it shows you the layers of reverence, the layers of recommitment, the layers of healing that are done during the Kwanzaa observances. And this is just as a wonderful synergy with all of the other activities and programs that many of us are joyfully a part of in our respective communities, right? So I will go through the Nguzo Saba, the seven principles of Kwanzaa. Don't say you didn't learn a little bit of Swahili tonight, right? Umoja, unity. Kujichagulia, self-determination. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. Ujama, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose. Kuumba, creativity. Imani, faith. And there are a variety of spaces where you can go and learn all types of information to just get an idea of how to see the Kwanzaa celebrations. And I focused on that because that's something that our families have observed for many decades. And it's something that many of our children and our grandchildren are part and parcel of with the deep understanding. You celebrate with those that you've worked with through the year, and even the new people that you're coming into communing with, because you're working to do things and build legacy together. All of that has been said to reconnect to when we speak of what is building legacy. It's working together, healing together, thriving together, the key term together, and to do that with elevation. I also like to highlight another portion that you can easily go on YouTube and look for the Black Candle, the full film. Make sure you put in the Black Candle, the full film, and it should bring you to the not only the trailer, but then the actual full film. It's about an hour of the Black Candle that was produced by M.K. Asante II, and I, in his own right, phenomenal award-winning filmmaker, professor, literary artist, author, spoken word artist, amongst other things, poet, and just continuing to elevate um, and extending the legacy that was exposed to him through his parents. And most persons may remember Dr. Molefi Asante, his father, who, professor, one of the formulators of Afrocentricity as a actual framework and engaging ideology for persons to understand African studies, amongst other things. I think it's important for persons to go and see it and look at it for yourself. Don't just take Queen Mother Dr. Chinzera's word for it, but do it on your own. Check for yourself. I think that that would be part and parcel. The other part that I'd like to share, and this is again the reason I am pulling from this particular work, is because it's important that persons know that when we speak of Kwanzaa, this is not just while people refer to it as solely an African American holiday, that the foundations and the roots of Kwanzaa, and I'll go to the quotation by Dr. Mfundishi. Kwanzaa was not the name that was used by these societies for their first fruit celebrations. As such, the first fruit celebrations in ancient Kemet was called Pert and Min, the coming forth of Min. Among the Zulu, Umkosi. Among the Swazi, Inkwala. Among the Matable, Inkwala. There's a click in there. I cannot do the click, so forgive me, but we're just giving the information. Among the Songa, Luma. Among the Levet, Fegula. Among the Ashanti, Orwira or Afahie. Among the Yoruba, Eje, Ohoro, Login, or Odun, Ijesu. I end the quote there. And this again, this is coming from the publication, The Spiritual Warriors Are Healers by Dr. Mfundishi Jehutimes. I encourage persons to look at that information, get some details. If you'd like to get it directly from me, you can email me at astspeaks, AST at gmail.com. Also, what's shared, and I mentioned it very lightly, when you speak of the Nguzo Sabo, the principles of the seven principles in each day from the 26th of December to the 1st of January for Kwanzaa celebrations and reflections, that there are five values and practices that are central to African first fruit celebrations, which are highlighted in the work of Dr. Mfundisha Jehudi. And these five values and practices actually formed the development of Kwanzaa. So the Kwanzaa may appear to be just something that came up in the 48 contiguous US and led by particular individuals. But the grounding, the foundation, the ancestral intelligence that's linked to Kwanzaa are grounded in harvesting, one, reverence, two, commemoration, three, recommitment, four, and celebration, five. I'm going to say those again just for the persons in the back of the room that were taking a little snack break and might not have heard that part. The five values and practices that are central to any African first fruit celebration, which form the development of Kwanzaa, are harvesting, reverence, commemoration, recommitment, and celebration. And it's very important for us to make sure that we share that so that persons do not think this is just like a Black Christmas or that it is a deviation from recognizing the spirit of illumination and light and looking at the Son of Light and leading into the new year in accordance with the Gregorian calendar. And then after the new year, in some societies, there are, and especially here in our Caribbean spaces, there is an observance for Three Kings Day. And persons always speak of the light and the North Star and following in the Three Kings. And as quiet as it's kept, these three kings came from different spaces in harmony to honor the Son of Light, the illuminated one. I think it's important, and here in this region, that's the holy day that tends to be highlighted even with more elevation than just Christmas, is to elevate that visitation by these great ones to the Son of Light, the Son of the Creator, just for the record. And we can come back and have conversations on what is and what's not, and who believes and who doesn't. But for the purposes of our conversation today, we would really like to highlight that there are a number of powerful, very powerful groundings when we speak of Kwanzaa and the upliftment of our spiritual foundations so that we are not dependent on any man made construct to celebrate and elevate those principles that support unity, self determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. Those are things that all of us, most of us, have some connection, some interest, some mastery, some elevation and work in. And that's the idea of what we are bringing in our fruition. So, as we get ready to wind down for this evening, and I had planned to have a guest, and I keep telling persons if you have something to share, I encourage you to share, because if you don't, then we'll just continue to keep certain things within and amongst us. I am encouraging persons to take some time, go to the United Nations website, un.org/en for English, other languages accordingly. And it would be great for you to see, particularly, that with a lot of the support and intervention and strong voices from the African community, let me make sure I clear that up. Black, Afro descendant, people of African ancestry, all of that. These organizations, many of us have been at the forefront of pushing the line around not only recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent, which was the theme for the decade, first international decade for people of African descent, but also to include these actionable deliverables that may come forward in improved education that is authentic and that is inclusive. The inclusion of adequate human health care for humans. No one should be struggling and going through health challenges for things that we have already cured, things that should not be interfered with. And persons should be given options, whether they are allopathic medicine options or naturopathic medicine options. And of course, there's osteopathy, homeopathy, there's a variety of different ways that we can heal. But no one should be struggling for clean water or having to walk for hours to acquire water that may not even be clean. Persons around the globe, there's 8.1 billion on the earth. However, a very small percentage own more than a third of the earth's landmass. And some persons will go as far as to say that one particular kingdom in the north, in Eurasia, that is reigned by a king now, has more than 30% ownership of real estate on the earth. Something to think about. So I definitely would like to send a shout out, and I say this in this conversation at the same time that because I was listening to some sisterin. The airports must be the place where we meet people that you have long-term relationships with, and I'm grateful that I've had some pretty wonderful conversations with some sisters that are doing things that I just never, I think, yeah, things that I just never knew were going on. But I feel that it's important to just know you have farming, agri- farmers, agriculturalists, particularly Black women in the 48 contiguous US and reaching out globally, that are putting agriculture and our ability to feed ourselves and prepare our own healing modalities and take care of ourselves and to be self sufficient in the midst of chaos at the forefront. And I would be remiss, because sometimes, you like to make sure that you are sharing certain things with our families. And many times I've realized that I'm learning certain things that I don't really think I know as well as I know as I thought I did. And I am learning. It's pharmacist, but check out the spelling. Farma, farm, ASIS, pharmacist. Kind of like an interesting play on pharmacy. But these sisters, and the other night, I mean, I would be remiss, Benita Clemens, Sister Queen Benita Clemens. I'm going to keep calling her name, Sister Queen Benita Clemens, of the pharmacist group. They were kind enough to invite me to their monthly meeting. She was recognized as the Woman Farmer of the Year in 2023, and she keeps bringing sisters together so that there can be a ongoing conversation with work. And I need to highlight that. Talk about actionable deliverables. It was just off the chain to see and hear what people are building, what people are doing. So I encourage persons to go to thepharmacist.com. I'll spell pharmacist out for you. The TheFarmasis. Again, Farm, FARMA, SIS.com. And there you can subscribe, you can receive their plant-based recipe book. They've got a newsletter that's available for persons that are interested. I always encourage my sisters and brothers to, support those that support our work. It's really a great opportunity for persons to be involved in this. There are so many different ways, because that's when we talk about, being able to be a part of these principles that I just shared, of unity, these principles of self determination, these principles of cooperative economics, collective work and responsibility, of purpose, of creativity and faith. This is a great way for us to start, close out this 2024, and go into 2025 with a really powerful, engaging space. Well, we're getting to the closing moments. I wish to extend my thanks to those that have tuned in. I am grateful for those that are willing to be a part of the legacy of engagement. I think this is a wonderful time for us to bring truth to power and highlight different festivities and gauge exactly what we're bringing to the table. I know that there's going to be a turnaround of uplifting energy, because that's when we call it, that's what it will be. And it's important that we call it into fruition and call it into being, so that we can truly, authentically grow and prosper in all the positive ways that are possible for each and every one of us. And I say that with the energy that will help us to take care of ourselves, to stay healed, and to honor the greatness that surrounds us. So, once again, I'm grateful to be able to share with our listening audience tonight a little snippet of thank you. Thank you. Oh, I love that background. It's fabulous, because that's what we're speaking of. We're speaking of sisters working together, growing together, thriving together, and really bringing it into fruition. I would be remiss if I also did not send a special shout out to Sister African Queen Mother Warriors, Sister Dr. Sandra, and Sister Queen Esther, who I will be joining in a powerful gathering on this Saturday, December 21st, on the actual solstice, winter solstice, for a gathering of African Queen Mother Warriors Rising. It'll be hosted by Oz Speaks, but it will be a reasoning amongst African women, African Queen Mother Warriors who are rising and rising together. It will be a live podcast, and it will be available on YouTube at Oz Speaks, as well as on Facebook on Oz Speaks. And as we say, African Queen Mother Warriors royalty shall be live streaming. And I encourage persons, again, Saturday, December 21st, 7 p.m. Atlantic, 6 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UK, because we're bringing both sides of the Atlantic together. Remember that culture heals humanity, land is our foundation, and spiritual harmony unifies us. We encourage you to do your part for building a new legacy. And in our forthcoming, we have a special podcast here on the Crew Podcast this Sunday, December 22nd, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Atlantic. And we're going to have some interesting conversations on how we build legacy and some of the realities that our youth are bringing to the table. Again, we appreciate love, value, and respect your support. If you have further questions or desire to make suggestions for themes of discussion or have a guest in mind, email me astspeaks, ASTSPEAKS, at gmail.com. And we look forward to you doing your part to build and live your purpose as willingly positive as is possible. We're looking forward to just hearing more and sharing even more in the very, very, very near future. And we give thanks as we close out tonight's broadcast. Aspiring Authors Magazine 100 Authors to Watch. I am one of 100. Your name could be here. So tune in, join, and live stream. Oh, yes, I want freedom. I want freedom. So, Pat, good night. Have a purpose in all you do. Just make sure that your purpose is true. Have a purpose in this here life, so your life ain't full of strife. I live a purpose each and every day, so we can live in Yahweh. I have a purpose in all you do. Just make sure your life is true. Every time we walk on the street, we see all the children crying. Every time we see our day, it seems like people are lying. Everywhere that we see on this earth is